Okay. So let's go to Amy Peterson.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Amy Peterson, and I'm the superintendent and principal at Mackinac Island School. And this is year 2 for me. So yeah, just thinking about what Bob and Alan were saying, I think kind of having that same goal and vision of providing equitable access for all of our students and our staff. And when we say all students, we really do mean all. And that's for our students that live very close in a very large, expensive home to our students that live a little bit farther away and don't quite have those resources. I live about 1.8 miles from the school back by the airport. And I can tell just by the level of how busy the internet is according to what kind of access I'm going to have. So when I wake up really early and I'm home alone, I know that my internet access will be great, but then some of those really popular times it's not. So I think just, being a part of this group, and even when we're traveling, hearing people talk about the Eastern UP and what we are doing by working together and collaborating, I think is really pretty exciting. So, thanks.
Excellent. Thank you, Amy. Dick M.
Hello, I'm Dick Mulvihill. I'm on Beaver Island, and I've been working on the broadband project for the last 4 years. And Beaver Island, being the most remote inhabited island in the Great Lakes, has some special barriers that we had to address. And we just have applied for the NTIA broadband infrastructure program.
Yes, that's great. I'm glad you could join us today, Dick, and we look forward to hearing a little bit more about your project that you're working on. Jenny Hoffman.
Hi, I'm Jenny Hoffman. I am the High-Speed Internet Committee of One for Moran Township, and I'm very excited that we are not going this alone. When I found out about the RDOF, I was also a member and a founding member of the Center for Change, and I was like the only one focused on, I was the task force. So when I found out that the RDOF fiber optic cable was coming to my township, I just wanted to shout from the rooftops. So just because our township now knows about it, what about everybody else? And how can we leverage this amazing opportunity? I did listen in with Jason on the Connect Nation webinar just a little bit while ago, and I was kind of fascinated that Livingston County, that they also are wondering how to, everybody doesn't just keep reinventing the wheel, how every township, every little entity that in the region is not going to be left on its own. And I'm thinking what we're doing with the EUP Connect is like it's something that maybe can be a template for communities like Livingston County, so that every little township doesn't start all over. Every little board doesn't start like, well, what do I know? And what do we do? That we can together have the resources to tackle this is very exciting. So I'm glad to be here.
Thank you very much, Jenny. And yes, I meant to make a point at the opening of the meeting, and that is we're writing history. And I'm really excited to be here with all of you to do that. So moving on with introductions, we'll go to Kenneth Trent. Ken, you're muted. Ken, you are unmuted, but we still aren't hearing you. Now you're coming in.
It's probably because I have CenturyLink and it takes a long time for my voice to travel out to the road to get a, let me get my stringing can and see if that helps. But my past employment history, I had worked at the intermediate school district when we were putting in the initial fiber optic plan for between all of the area's schools way back in the mid 80s. And then I was superintendent in schools here in Cedarville for a long time. And now I'm director of the local community foundation. And so I've been involved in a lot of aspects here in the community. If you're familiar with the Laceno Islands, not only do we have several points that go out into Lake Huron, but we have 37 islands also locally, most of which are inhabited only in the summertime, but internet connections for the island residents is pretty bad. And then there's the economic development opportunities that are available if we can increase our internet capabilities. We have a lot of people that have said, I'd live there in a minute if you had broadband and I could work from home and do the things that I need to do from a work aspect. So, as the director of the foundation now, we're really interested in how we can help and what we can do. And I do have a little history and know a lot of people. So that's kind of why I'm involved.
Same thing.
Ken was out fishing on a boat when we used our big hook and reeled him back in, and we really appreciate him supporting the project. Megan Mitchell.
Hi, I'm Megan. I'm the administrative assistant for technology and REMC at the EUPISD. So I work with Jason.
Thank you. Very huge support. We appreciate it. Peter Huston, you want to take a minute and introduce yourself, and also take a minute and just tell all the folks on the call a little bit about the Great Lakes Island Alliance. Not everyone here would be familiar.
Thank you very much, Joanne. My name is Peter Huston, and today I'm on the mainland, but normally I live in South Bass Island in Put-in-Bay, Ohio. And this last year, back in June, I was hired to be the first employee for the Great Lakes Islands Alliance, which is an alliance of 16 islands from Madeline Island all the way up there close to Duluth to one of our new islands coming on board, Wolf Island, down in the eastern end of Lake Ontario. We, of course, our job is to try to find common areas for our islands to be able to learn and share and understand other islands' issues and how to be able to come up with good solutions for them. And we're sort of based on the Main Island Coalition, and we're helped along the way by the Island Institute back, which is in Maine. And thanks to Matt Presser and John Allen, they got us off the ground about 5 years ago. And so what we've been doing is we've been surveying our island members over the last couple of years about top priority issues. And of course, over and over again, broadband connectivity comes up to the top for most every island. And even my island, which is a fairly big tourism site, has very uneven access to the broadband. We have Spectrum cable, we have Amplex microwave, and we have a system called MI2 that went out of business last year. So, and as well as DSL by Frontier. We're fortunate that our school system, back when Verizon serviced our island, did establish a T3 line just for the school. But beyond that, the rest of the people on the island have really suffered. And so, what my goal is today is to connect everybody here if they're interested in the EUP Connect for helping them to learn, to share information. Again, our goal is to be a provider of connectivity for when it comes to communication and conversation. And again, my job is to help you guys in any way I can. We're not here advocating for one kind of provider over the next. We're just trying to find out what will be the best solution for each individual island, and whether or not that's Starlink or whether it's fiber optic or cable, whatever we can help to find as far as resources. And Beaver Island has really been a leader in this process, as well as Madeline Island. I invited a couple of people from Madeline, but they did manage to get their entire island hooked up on fiber optics. So to me, these two islands are sort of leading the way in this conversation. Thank you very much again, Joanne, and to Jason for being able to host this today. And I'll put my information up here so that if anybody wants to get in touch with me, are interested in the Great Lakes Islands Alliance, we're always interested in hearing from you.
Great. Thank you very much, Peter. It's been a pleasure working with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, I'll go ahead and turn things over to Angie MacArthur.
Did we
Eastern
get
Upper-
Betty? Did we get Betty introduced?
Oh, maybe not. Thank you. Thank you for paying attention for me. Betty, can we hear you?
Yes, I
Yes.
guess can't hear me. So, yes, I'm Betty Coffey. I'm a year-round resident in Clark Township, living east of Cedarville. I'm excited to hear how many of you are on here between Cedarville and down 134 all the way down to Drummond Island and all of that. Again, just I retired up here, so I've been up here about 5 years, and the internet challenge is enormous. So I'm excited. I was involved early on in the Center for Change. Haven't had as much connection recently. I guess what I was really going to say is my best connection is always cellular, which means I'm working with a small screen, and sometimes when I reach for a control, it isn't quite where, you know, that's the other limitation of it. But anyway, so my cellular works best right out here. So thank you for letting me join you today and learn a little more.
Great. Thank you, Betty. And Jason, Betty's also on Prentice Bay. Okay, Angie, take it away.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Angie MacArthur. I'm the superintendent at the Eastern Upper Peninsula Intermediate School District. Thanks to Joanne and Peter for pulling this together, and Jason for spearheading the passion of this project for many, many years. We noticed during COVID that 10% of our students had zero connectivity and 30% had limited access, similar to what Betty was talking about, trying to do their homework on a cell phone. That's not okay in anybody's book. And my job is to provide opportunities for the 6,400 kids in our region. Equitable and affordable access to broadband connectivity is a huge, huge part of that opportunity. We've talked, that's the education piece. Alan talked about, and Ken talked about the economic piece. We have people that want to live here. And Susie did too. We have people that want to move up here, but they can't work in the UP. There's also a healthcare component. You know, many of us drive hours and hours for a 15-minute medical appointment. So we think there's a better way. Back in April, we invited folks that were interested to join us in an introductory call. And from that, we created the EUP Connect Collaborative. We have asked all of our townships and school districts, our cities, villages, and counties in the Chippewa, Luce, and Mackinac counties to join with us in membership and ownership of a collaborative effort to ensure that every citizen in the Eastern UP gets access to equitable and affordable internet connectivity. So in the past couple of months, we have been all over the place, and a shout out to the folks at the Center for Change, because we couldn't have done it without you. Shout out to Ken Drenth. We've hit, I can't even tell you how many board meetings, but to date we have 12 school districts that have opted in, and we have 16 townships and cities that have opted in. And what we asked them to do was contribute 3% of the ARPA or the federal ESSER monies that they were going to be receiving. And the plan is to take those collaborative funds and really get a concerted effort going to resolve the issue. We are poised to start additional data collection, to get engineering plans going, and to work with all of our partners to make sure that we know where everyone is so no one gets left behind. So with that commitment we've gotten to date is about 600,000 of the $1 million budget. For most of our townships, it's a very small amount of money that they're contributing, some as low as $500, but they're getting expertise and leadership of $1 million budget. So we think it's a pretty good way to solve a really huge problem that has been plaguing our area for decades. So with that, I would turn it over to Jason, I believe. Unless you have questions, I'm happy to answer questions too.
Thanks, Andy.
I've got a question. I wasn't following exactly. Where did your funding come from to go through with this initiative?
So the school districts have received ESSER funds. And we asked all of the school districts to designate 3% of their ESSER federal dollars to the fund. And school districts are footing about 60% of this project. The townships, cities, and counties and villages have been asked for 3% of the American Recovery Plan Act. I always get the letters wrong, but ARPA. And most of the entities are at the point now of just waiting for the feds to tell them that they're approved or not. So we've received one check. We were very excited. Detour Village sent us their membership, but it is going to be owned by the entities. And there's a steering committee that will be meeting on Thursday to kick it off. We have representation of the school districts, the townships, the counties, hospitals in the area, tribal representatives, library, Center for Change, an interested community member in Ken Drenth, and then Jason and I. So we're really excited to get this going.
So a good question. Where does the money come from? Really, it's 3% of Recovery Act of recovery funds from both the CARES Act and the American Rescue Plan Act. It's not really that 3% is going to get everybody connected. 3% is how do we best invest the other 97%? So if 3% just in Chippewa-Mackinac Moose County, if 3% of those funds that communities might determine that broadband is a need for their community, if 3% of that number in our region is $1 million, and that creates a budget to help build the plans and the public-private partnerships on how to best invest the other 97%. Not all 97% will go towards broadband, but if we come together as communities, there are plenty of areas in our region that broadband infrastructure is going to be the best investment for the rescue plan funds. So our initiative is about creating awareness of and getting all of everybody at the table. Our local governments, our schools, healthcare, our counties, our tribes, our electric cooperative, getting them all at the table because we all have access to different pots of funds, different funding mechanisms to ensure that our communities only have to do this once. And this is the last time we have to do it. Schools in a collaborative like this schools and libraries in a collaborative like this is very valuable because we coordinate our funding. There are specific funds available through the Universal Service Fund that are, and to best leverage that investment from the FCC. If we're coordinating with this, it gives us a target. So schools have the E-rate program. Schools and libraries have the E-rate program. Consortiums of schools and libraries can apply for their E-rate discount on eligible services together. That best leverages the economies of scale across the region. Healthcare, we have our rural health clinics. That's the Rural Health Fund with another slice of the Universal Service Fund pie. Then you have the electric cooperatives, which most of their funds are targeted at electric cooperative infrastructure, but you need the electric cooperative for their, or the utility in general, for that you need to partner with them on their infrastructure, and B, the partnering with them on communications infrastructure increases the opportunity for a safe, secure utility infrastructure. So I can go on and on through the sectors, but this is specifically the islands. So we refer to Suzanne, I'm going to call on you. So is Drummond Island one island, or is it many? Oh, you're
There we
muted.
go. Sorry about that. Well, it's actually many. We have over 50 islands out in front of Drummond Island, most of which are privately owned, but there are a few that are have been developed and have several folks that live on them, but the majority are privately owned. But yeah, there's over 50 islands out in front of Drummond that are occupied, partially occupied. Some are vacant, but they do have residents like Cedarville and the Lachino Islands. Mostly in the summer. We have one island that has some folks on it year round, but otherwise they're mostly summer residents.
Yeah, so we tend to refer to one or two islands, but there are a lot of islands that are included in the Lachino Islands and Drummond Island, Nebish Island, Sugar Island. You go down, through all of the membership of the Great Lakes Islands Association. There's a lot of big islands, or there's a few big islands, and then there's a lot of small islands. Mackinac Island, but students and adults live on many of those islands. So one of the common statements is you connect people to education and you connect people to healthcare, you've connected everybody. So we can figure out how to connect continents underneath the ocean, but we can't figure out how to connect our islands in our, we can't figure out how to connect our people in our own communities. The closer you get to the US-Canada border, the more challenges we have. So our goal with connecting with the Great Lakes Island Alliance is to coordinate activities and leverage every public-private partnership that we need to do to get everybody connected in an equitable fashion. It shouldn't matter where somebody lives in the Eastern Upper Peninsula on what type of connection is available to them. I'll give you a this is like a target statement. We run a 3-county network, which interconnects all of our schools. So on day one of learning, there were 11,000 unique computers that connected to the school network when the students are at school. Every one of those computers transferred 4.9 gigabytes of data. To put that in perspective, if the students are outside of school, doesn't matter where somebody's learning from, that's how much data you need to move in a day for learning now. Telehealth, it's all the same. So if you look at the current definitions of broadband, we've stopped talking in megabits per second, because the current what the FCC classifies as broadband, it would take almost a full day, just like 24 hours, just to transfer that amount of data, and it's becoming more interactive. So that's why it's so, why this is such a great opportunity, because there's funds that communities get to decide how they're investing them. There's funds that communities get to decide what partnerships they want to work out to best serve their community. This is like the perfect storm with connectivity funding. The next 2 years are the critical time frame that we can, if we work together and we build partnerships between our communities, the partnerships that we need to get everybody connected will follow. So that's with the collaborative. That's why we're presenting to boards and representatives of associations to work on garnering the support from our leadership to everybody understands that that connectivity is critical. We have an opportunity now to actually ensure that critical service we can influence it through partnerships. So that's my 5-minute, 10-minute overview of what the real purpose of the EUP Connect Collaborative and what our initiative is to get this done on behalf of our communities, and that includes all of the islands that are part of Chippewa, Mackinac, and Lewis County. And if we can partner with any island within that's part of the Great Lakes Island Alliance, the more powerful we are, and the more likely it is that we'll reach our vision. So with that, I would like to, I think on the agenda, Dick Mulvihill from Beaver Island. Could you explain a little bit more about, maybe give a high level overview of the partnerships that Beaver Island has built just to seek grant funds?
Yes, I'll get into it. But before that, I've got a question. Did I understand you correctly that some of the communities received RDOF grants?
No, none of the communities are direct recipients of any RDOF funds.
Okay.
There
All right.
there are RDOF targeted locations within Chippewa, Mackinac, and Lewis County, which brings an investment to our communities, but none of those funds are coming directly to our communities. So the collaborative is about how do we best create the partnership to leverage and extend that investment throughout our communities.
Okay.
The RDOF is going to build 1,500 miles of fiber across the eastern UP. And I think Jenny mentioned her township got it. Her township's included in that build out. But that's where we want to pick up the business, if you will, of making sure that those houses and residences that are not part of the RDOF, that we continue that work and make sure they get served.
Okay, who is the service provider that actually won the award for those RDOF grants?
Atlantic Engineering Group, AEG. They received, that's the $37 million with the fiber build. There are others that have been designated but not awarded yet.
All right.
So,
okay.
Dick, one of the things I requested on the listening session was because the providers have to get through the long form process, the application process with the FCC before the award is actually official and they can start drawing funds.
Right.
So they're supposed to be sending me, this is where we go look to see who's actually got their application finally approved and what census blocks are the locations in that they have to serve based on that approval.
Yeah, because the FCC is going through a lot of issues. There's a lot of concern about how they rolled that out. There's been a lot of service providers looking at who were awarded them, and you're right on the census block, because there might be islands that you might think your whole area might be covered, but it's on a census block level, and that was the issue. And that's basically one of our problem. Well, our main problem in that being the most remote on Great Lakes, we really could not find a partner to apply for these grants. We did apply through NMU, Northern Michigan University, for the Reconnect program, but we were deemed ineligible because of inaccurate FCC data collection information, which is provided by the service provider. We couldn't apply for the RDOF because based on the FCC map, we indicated that our service levels are greater than we're at 2510. When in reality, service, we've done surveys, most of the island, our connectivity right now is five megs down. So what basically we've been doing is just, scouring through all of the grant opportunities that are available. And we probably ran into those problems because basically the FCC and the USDA has very restrictive requirements for the grants. When the American Rescue Plan came up, there was a lot of opportunities there. In fact, there was too many because there were so many applications or grant paths available. That it was difficult to identify the ones that really fit our needs. And I think for the American Rescue Plan, there was $65 billion for broadband, and out of that, $42 billion was for underserved areas. But when I looked through it, the way they set up some of the grant procedures, it was very difficult to really get the appropriate funding. And since we didn't have a partner, we were kind of, by definition, not even eligible to apply. But I did find the U.S. Department of Commerce, the National Information, Telecommunication and Information Administration, which is part of the Department of Commerce, came out with the broadband infrastructure grant. And the grant nationwide was for $288 million, which was somewhat of a stumbling block because that's a nationwide grant and it's not a lot of money. But when I dug into it, I found it was really kind of a game changer for federal grants. Grants, because one, it is a grant. It's not like the Reconnect Fund and the RDOF Fund, which is actually an FCC, they call it a reverse auction, that only eligible, the only people eligible are service providers and ISPs. The focus of the NIT grant was public-private partnerships. So they were looking at local communities partnering with ISPs that had a track record of building out broadband services. So that fit it. In addition to that, the way they wrote the grant was that the community, rather than the service provider, was the main grant applicant. They were the focal point. So we we found a consulting service called CCG Consulting, and we had a proposal for them to roll out a feasibility study for broadband. But when I found out about this grant offering, I requested to see if they would work with us to apply for the grant. They did. They wrote the entire grant for us. They also sent out their engineers to do feet on the ground. We went through all of the island telco and power infrastructure, so that they would have a hands-on idea of really what the costs are. Then we collectively went to Great Lakes Energy, who is our current, who is the power provider on the island, to see if we could work with them to put in the application. They agreed, and CCG wrote the application, and the application is $15.5 million for fiber to the home network. That would be to all Great Lakes customers, to all the homes and the businesses on the island. plus 2 towers for a 4 gigabit microwave backbone to the mainland. Also, in addition, but separate to this was, hold on a second, I've got a rogue. Hold on. There. My dog was caught on her exit outside. In addition to our grant, we didn't know about it, but the Great Lakes, or I should say the Grand Traverse Bay, put an application for submarine cable between Beaver Island and Northport as part of their NIT application. So the grant was masterly written by Doug Dawson, who is the president, because we have a, because we're so remote, we have a really unique island economic environment. And the cost of this service is very high because of the cost of just build outs on the island. So that we feel that we've got a good chance at getting the grant. The NIT didn't have a matching grant, which is unique on the FCC, or I should say in all federal grants. Usually they require up to maybe 25%. They didn't require it, but they recommended a 10% matching fund. So Great Lakes contributed 1.5 million. The township's contribution is only $30,000. So it's very economically beneficial to do that. We knew that the competition would be heavy on this. Since the applications were submitted, there have been 280 applicants with a total of $2.5 billion for a fund that's 288 million. So it's out there. We still think we have a good chance of getting it, primarily because of our remoteness, because of our partner Great Lakes Energy, and because of, as most islands, our economy is based on tourism. Without broadband, we're not competitive with the mainland, and we're going to lose out on that battle. The timelines on this are fast track. Application was submitted on August 17th. The awards will be granted on November 29th, and the award recipients have 1 year to build out the network. That's warp speed in Fed time. So we got our fingers crossed until November 29th.
Thank you, Dick. Very, very valuable information. I first met Doug Dawson. Actually, I met Doug Dawson, and my first connection with the Great Lakes Island Alliance was when the EUPISD and EUP Regional Development and Planning Commission, when we were awarded a broadband, a middle mile infrastructure planning grant, which was determining what fiber infrastructure do we need to connect our communities to each other. I'm going to do a quick screen share because this gives me my talking point. If you give me a heads up, or okay, so participants can see my screen now. So that the planning initiative was simply to determine what infrastructure do we need throughout our communities to connect our communities to each other. This is ultimately my connect the dots map. So what we shared with so CCG did the feasibility study on what it would take to connect our community anchors to each other. And right down to designing, engineering a middle mile network. So what you're looking at on the screen is regardless of who builds the infrastructure, who partners on the infrastructure, you need these highways. You need infrastructure between your communities. Otherwise, you pay a toll just for your community's communication. So in the Eastern Upper Peninsula, the dots that you see, the various colored dots that you see represented on the map are our schools, our libraries, our rural health clinics, our preschools, our K-12 schools, our university and community college, and any of their satellite campus locations throughout the EUP. So that planning initiative, and some of our tribes. So we have we're in the primary service area of the Sioux tribe, Sault Ste. Marie tribe of Chippewa Indians. Plus we have the Bay Mills Indian community here. So some of the dots on the map are their facilities. Some of those white lines that look like they lead to nowhere, we had 60 of the electric cooperatives facilities incorporated into that study. So this helped us inform us of what our needs are as far as the middle mile, because that middle mile infrastructure is one of the biggest barriers, from just to get to an island, that connection between your mainland and your island, even if you're coming off of one island onto another, that's your middle mile infrastructure, and that's one of the biggest barriers towards broadband expansion. So in the EUP Connect Collaborative, what if we connect all of the communities to each other? Everywhere along that highway, you create opportunities for public-private partnerships to ensure that everybody that's halfway between the dots, because that's where the unserved people are. The unserved people live halfway between your dots in your communities. You want to know where the unserved people are, go to the islands and drive to the township lines. Where the townships meet and the islands, that's where your unserved people are. And the further you get away from the anchors, those dots in your communities, the more likely it is that you will find unserved people. So not only does connecting these dots to each other create opportunities for public-private partnerships, it makes it so that you can leverage those partnerships. So Dick, by your example, you have the two townships. Your primary partners on that are your two townships and Great Lakes Energy, which Great Lakes Energy is in the broadband game. But they have upstream partners that are funding sources and connectivity that through those partnerships can be leveraged on behalf of your community. So that is it. In a nutshell, Beaver Island is the microcosm of the best types of partnerships that have to be created to get this done. Whether it's we got to apply for grants, we got to do feasibility studies, we've got to do actually actionable engineered plans, so that when we're building these partnerships, there's something for the providers to partner on. So the community and the provider, if you don't have the this is what we're partnering on. So Beaver Island is a great example of how we can partner, and the bigger our partnerships get, the more likely it is that we will get service everywhere. So like you said, you also mentioned that the schools, I say the schools, Beaver Island has one school, I believe. So your primary mechanism of connecting was a DS3 from the mainland out to the island. That the schools were able to leverage funds probably for many years and cost allocate out what was for school purposes and what was for the providers' purposes. Those are key partnerships to ensure that we're not all duplicating, expenditures. So that model of the anchor works on the primary connectivity in and out of the community, and the providers are able to leverage that infrastructure anywhere along that path, as long as we're all working together. So like Vic, you mentioned the NTIA grant that your communities went after, are the Sioux Ste. Marie tribe of Chippewa Indians. They just submitted their, it was 52 million for working to ensure that tribal members are served throughout their entire service area, which is the eastern 3 counties plus the 4. So Chippewa, Mackinac, Luce County, Alger, Marquette, Schoolcraft, and there's one more, Marquette, Alger, Schoolcraft, Delta. So those kind of partnerships, everybody has access to some type of funding mechanism that they are the only entity that can apply. They're the only entity that can be the applicant. So in the Beaver Island grant, who was actually the applicant?
The stipulations of the NIT grant, the local community is the main applicant. It's not the service provider, and that's a change in bringing the community as the lead rather than the ISP. And there was another interesting stipulation in the grant, in that one of the budget payments that would not be approved is profit, meaning the applicant or the grant is focused on nonprofit, basically rural electric co-ops, because rural electric co-ops have really been the leading recipients of grants, both from the Reconnect grant and then also the RDAF grant, because the private telcos can't compete with price on the rural electric co-ops. And with the NIT grant, they've actually stipulated that within the language of the application. So if there are rural electric co-ops servicing your area, it's a step ahead, because basically when CCG submitted the application, since Great Lakes Energy has been rolling out their TrueSeam service for the last 4 years, they've got over 7,000 subscribers, and they have the expertise today in design, build, and managing broadband fiber to the home networks. That whole design and engineering component was picked up by Great Lakes Energy because they're a proven service provider.
Jason, there's a question that ties into that, and 2 questions actually. One is Cloverland Electric involved with this effort? I'll have you speak to that. But then also, what is the definition of connectivity? End of the driveway? So do you want to answer those 2 questions?
Is Cloverland Electric Cooperative involved in the effort? Yes. They aren't a, we'll call it a shareholder member of the collaborative yet, but as far as partnering, working on the partnerships that we need to work on to partner around the infrastructure, Cloverland Electric is very involved in this effort.
Do they have a representative on the steering committee?
We have invited Mike Heiss, who's the CEO. And they may designate somebody else.
The other question was, what is the definition of connectivity? End of driveway?
My definition of, you want my definition or the? So our definition, the EUP Connect Collaborative's definition of connectivity is it's attached to the house. It's actually attached to the premise, and it's a phone call to a provider to subscribe. So
the co-ops, the rural electric co-ops, they have what they call passing, and that is that the fiber passes the house, not specifically to the premise. But that's how they first, identify the cost to the premise. But it's just the passing. The next step is the connectivity to the individual subscriber.
And that's what our intent is to make that last connection and put bids out for internet service providers to say, yeah, we could take that section, or we could do this whole section, or we want people to be able to have access at their house, not necessarily a barrier that the fiber is running 500 feet to the north or south.
Well, the way they do it in all cases is either aerial or buried, and obviously there's a differentiation in the cost based upon if it's aerial or buried. But that's how CCG helped us out. In fact, they came to the island, spent 2 days, taking a look at the infrastructure. So when they talked to Great Lakes Energy, they were aware of what the cost would be. And since they've been working on these projects, they've got a database and they know exactly what the cost is for passing on the different initiatives that they've been working on.
Yep.
Beaver Island was at almost the highest level of cost of the different initiatives they've been involved in.
I'm super impressed with the work you guys have done over there. We were really fortunate that Doug Dawson was part of he was the consultant hired on the broadband planning grant back in 2018, I think. And at that point, they said, pump the brakes. There's this thing called the RDOF auction coming out. And so, because at the time, the EUPISD was poised to actually build the fiber. So with the RDOF, we've jumped, 14 miles ahead. So Doug is also our consultant with the EUP Connect. He just has a wealth of knowledge. So we're really excited, and
without Doug, we could not have done it, because basically, we provided him all of the information, the economic information, cultural information, everything on the island. From there, he took that, and then he crafted the application specifically, focused on how we meet the NIT priority for the award.
So,
Jason, I wanted to jump in and just call your attention to the time, and I didn't know what your availability was after 3. It's 3:07, and we had listed on the agenda yet available opportunities, and I didn't know if you had specifically covered that yet, and then open discussion. And I'm not sure what time you wanted to wrap up by.
Well, real quick, I wanted to talk about one of the key pieces of data that we need to collect within our communities is the actual distance, the data collection. Part of the data collection that we need to do within our communities is the actual distance it is from the public right away to the house or to the business, because that piece of data helps determine how much cost is ultimately borne by the homeowner, and it helps inform the private your providers of what they should plan within their budget to because some of them will, like, they cover the first 300 feet and then it's on somebody else to get any distance beyond that. So that distance within our communities is a very key piece of data that we'll be working on collecting through the collaborative. So, and I know we are 8 minutes past 3. So I can skip over the available opportunities because I think we've hit on a lot of them today of why this is such, why the opportunities are available today. I would like to just do as we've had this discussion, has there been ideas that, different things that we need to think about as we move forward with this, with the initiative that you might be thinking of that are comments, questions?
Jason, this is Ken. I get the idea you just proposed there, or the need for data from the right of way to a residence. Where is that information available? How would we collate that kind of information? Do the present ISP providers have that kind of information, or if they do, they probably wouldn't share it?
No, our local governments have it.
Our local governments.
So either our local governments have it, or they have people out at the property that can collect it.
And the local government would have it in what context? Would it be
In
a property description parcel that for assessing that would show some of that information, or?
yeah, so in the Eastern Upper Peninsula, EUP regional planning works with the county equalization departments to develop the GIS maps. So a lot of the GIS, like the parcels are in GIS. What we don't actually have yet is like a person at a parcel saying, this is an assessment of like, sometimes we're going to have to go out and we're going to have to collect some data. So this is data that needs to be collected. Some of it exists in various forms in various places, and if it does, like if there is actually GIS information that tells us how far it is from the public right of way to where the dwelling is on the parcel. We need to find that information as soon as possible. And if we don't have it, or if it doesn't exist, we need to collect it as quickly as possible.
We can talk about that more later, but we need a plan to, that send to, I don't know, township supervisors or some kind of authority to be able to collect that. I don't know who would lead that.
So Jason actually asked at a township board meeting the other night, Pam Chipman from Mackinac County Equalization was there and mentioned she was going out to do readings, and he said, hey, could you collect this piece of information too? And she said, sure. We have ways.
So right now, when maybe one of the two supervisors on the call when a permit is pulled for a new driveway at a parcel and the counties issue the, they determine what the 911 service address is there anything within the, like, does anybody go out and determine what the GIS is, the coordinate for the dot on the map?
I can answer that. Nobody's doing that. But to me, it's one of the things that we're planning to do with our sewer system is to GIS all the grinder pumps and lift stations and other assets on that system. But you mentioned the regional planning and equalization maps. The property lines that are on those maps are way off. I mean, like sometimes 50 feet off. So they're not going to be very helpful up for us, except in a general way. There are no distances that they've placed on the layers that are available that they put out as far as the property lines. Although the assessor working with the regional plan or working with the equalization does create sketches of the buildings, but she doesn't identify their location on the lot. But that would be to me, a viable next step to start to have the assessors in the individual townships actually GPS where the buildings are, and ideally at a location where the utility service enters the building.
Yes.
I have one more item, and that is that pretty much every parcel initially was described within the context of a government lot from when Bert and those guys came up in the 1830s, 40s, 50s and surveyed this area. And those government lot lines, they have never created a layer in the GIS. And I've talked to the regional planning about that, and it's something that's desirable, but it hasn't been implemented yet. So if you're actually looking at people's property descriptions to see where it is, they all started with a government lot, but if you don't know where the government lot lines are, then you can't really accurately depict where it is.
Mark, this is Dan Realitz. I'm just thinking concerning our association here, that it might be a good idea to possibly mobilize some of these, like our association as an example, and that it be incumbent on the association to provide that distance map. And I'll put up my hand to do it for our association, if that would be helpful.
I think it would be very helpful myself. And I actually picked up a gift that I'm going to share with you when national office gets done scanning it for me. I got an updated plat of your association from the Sanderson family that you may, or I don't think you have.
Okay, I'd be happy to stop by and see if I can get a copy of that, and maybe I could create just a manual overlay of distances onto that plat.
Yeah, this was like a remonumentation that was done of the plat that Omar had done.
Okay.
Family gave me a copy of it, and I'm sending it up to national office to scan for us so I can shoot you a PDF when I get it.
Okay, great.
But if anybody has unrecorded plat information or surveys, it'd be really helpful to the townships and the regional planning and equalization if people would share those, because they're not necessarily recorded or shared with any government entity.
Jason, I'll tell you from the challenges, the only challenge I see there among all the others that have already been mentioned is the when we look at drawings or, I think we've still got the old assessment cards. It's essentially written on 3x5 cards in the assessor's office. We're looking at as the crow flies versus, what does the driveway actually look like? And so I'm like Dan and others thinking that this is going to be a project that we're going to actually have to put boots on the ground and go house to house maybe. I've only got 750 on Sugar Island, but 750 houses is a lot of houses to visit. But if that's what we have to do, that's what we'll do.
What is right of way defined? Also, in a place like where we live on Island 8, is the right of way South Forest Lane, which is the main road down to the middle of the island, or is it out on M129?
Ken, who are you asking that question?
Anybody who knows the answer.
Oh. Well, I could tell you where I'm at. We've got essentially three different types of roads, for lack of a better term. We've got the main roads, which are considered county roads. Then we've got the unpaved roads, which are the seasonal roads. And then we've got roads that have been created by landowners that have essentially been given, they built a half a mile of road through the bush, and then the Clover Electric came in and said, "Well, give us permission to put your electric line down that road." So we've got essentially three different types of situations that we'll have to deal with. And each one is a little bit different. There's no right of way in a private road. With a seasonal road, it's essentially 25 feet from the center line on each side, and the county roads I think is 33 feet or 35 feet, something like that. So from the center line on each side. So it really depends on what type of road you're talking about and where that road comes to and from.
It would strike me that a critical distance, I'm assuming that most of this is going to be the fiber optics in most areas would be strung on current power poles. It would strike me that the distance from a power pole to the residence would be a key number.
Jason Kronemeyer, do you know what the definition of where the right of way is? I mean, is it from a power pole or is it from a county road or state highway?
It's from the center of the road.
Which road?
County, state.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Real quick, Peter, you're gonna drop off, so I want to thank you for pulling this together and helping us with this conversation.
Thank you very much for you guys hosting all this. This is really amazing amount of information to be able to share, and this is what we're happy to help again if we can. Just let me know. We'll share the recording of this meeting on our Facebook page and with our members.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.
So Ken, I guess to answer your question,
well, I know in Dan Realis's case, that's a private road. Prentice Bay Road is a private road. Beavertail, I think, is a private road. So they would be measuring from their residence to M134 or 134.
Right, because where can public funds actually be invested?
Right.
And we have to know what we need to raise funds to get beyond the public, where the public funds can be invested. So, because you have a lot of islands, a lot of seasonal or private roads that are essentially associations. So at that point, there are certain types of funds that we can leverage that can't be invested on private property. So, and the provider can't go there without some type of an easement. So, but it's still, you know, we have to know what that is. So I think you're right. I think it's whatever the closest point from that place to the public right away, what, like to public property. And it, like, there's a lot of public property that isn't necessarily the 33 feet or the 66 feet from the center of the road. You know, like EUPISD owns 10 acres on the top of Rockview Hill. So that is all public property. So those are locations that we talked about, you know, within, you know, for broadband expansion, you have to have a place to establish facilities. And the most effective places to establish those facilities are on public property, because not necessarily because you want to control it. You want to break down the barriers of getting service into and throughout your community. So the more we can leverage the public property and the public right of ways, state lands, federal lands, township lands, those every one of those lands that we can leverage help get us those last 500 feet. You know, you got the last miles, last 500 feet. To answer the question about the electric poles, not all of Cloverland's poles are in the public right of way. The utility, so the electric cooperatives, when they were formed through the Electrification Act, a lot of their pole routes are not in the public right of way because there were already houses sitting there. So anytime you see an electric pole, like if you're driving down the road and you see a utility pole that is not in the public, like it looks like it's way back in a field, that's an easement with the local landowner, and the utility easement, the only one that can use that is the utility.
So, well, that's why I raised the question about Cloverland. If we develop a partnership with Cloverland, I mean, is it not possible to use the same easement definition that they have for electricity, that it could be used to string fiber optic?
So right now in Michigan, as I understand it, communications cannot, or it's not authorized within legislation for a communications company to automatically be able to ride the utilities easements. The utility can and there will have to be a lot of more fact checking, because this is how as best as I understand it, based on the work that I've been part of, and talking to the electric cooperative and the different contacts throughout, that is one of the barriers to broadband, is that the easement, the private easement that's been granted to the utility is not automatically available to the communications companies.
But, well, is that easement situation, say Cloverland's to grant to a provider, or so it's
No.
kind of a legislative definition that we're working with, I take
Yeah.
it. Okay.
Yeah, so the Cloverland's, so the easement is with the landowner and the utility.
Got it.
So if that original easement didn't cover communications, it only covers the utility.
There's another side of that too, Dan, is that there are many areas that are only covered by what they term prescriptive easements, where an easement was never actually granted. But the poles have been there for enough decades that if it goes to court, they can get that. But it would be overburdening the easement to allow other utilities to use it if it was only granted to Cloverland. So the phone companies and the communications companies have to have their own individual easements with the landowners and with the county over the right-of-ways. And there's lots of roads that, at least in Mackinac County, that have been abandoned, that were, seasonal roads that the county didn't want to mess with anymore, and they've abandoned them. And so that it's no longer a public access. Same's true on islands, and the relational islands, especially like Marquette Island, LaSalle Island. There were a number of platted areas that were sold off where people have homes over there. And the original roads that went with those plats have been abandoned, or they were never accepted by the county in some cases. So they might have even been in the plat and dedicated for public use, but if the county didn't accept them as a county road, then they may not be considered public anymore. There's a lot of confusion out there that's going to have to be broken through. And I've been working with our local county road commission to try to do that on like the road ends, for instance. We've got over 30 road ends going into the lake. The state of Michigan has an interest in it. The county has an interest in it. And the township since the 30s with McNitt doesn't even have the capacity legislatively to own a road anymore. Hope that helps lessen the confusion rather than add to it.
Thank you for that, Mark.
Well, in order to start collecting that kind of data, we really need some definitions of what we can collect and what's permissible to use, I guess. I don't. But that's not necessarily our topic for today, I guess. That's something that the committee is going to have to deal with and figure out to get that kind of information.
Well, for me, that reemphasizes the importance of the collaborative itself, and why I'm so excited to see that we have over half of our budget in place for the 2-year budget for the collaborative, because as that comes together, then we're going to be able to people focused on those pieces right there and be able to start doing that work. So I think that's really exciting. Jason, did you have anything further? Do we want to ask if there's any more questions before we close?
I guess questions or comments. I think it's good conversation, because every conversation we have, it increases the understanding of what we need, what the challenges are ahead of us. The good news is we're not alone in this statewide. Challenges are being identified statewide, and the challenges can be worked on to be overcome. There is no challenge that we can't overcome to do this.
I've got one other comment that's especially potentially viable for the islands. There's 2 companies, Starlink and OneWeb, that are putting positioning satellites up that may come into play when it comes to servicing some of the outlying areas and island areas. And then when they come up with 6G, there's something they call Aaron positioning. If I can find it's a new style network that's an aerial radio access network. And that's what they're going to try to tie into 6G when they bring that out.
So Mark, do you know how many of the Clymer, do you know how many of the Les Chenaux Islands have electric service have residences with electric meters on them?
Most of the structures on the islands on the lake itself have electricity at this point. There's still a number of them in the interior, like hunting camps and areas on more the outer shore that don't have utilities going to them, but there's buried cables. Like I know Marquette Island has at least 3 buried cables servicing different parts of it. So probably at least 3/4 of the 900 plus houses on the islands have electric service now, I think.
And like Hill Island and Island, what is it, Island number 8 that have?
Yeah, Hill Island and Island number 8 both have utilities and bridges going out to them. So the center line of the roads where the homes are situated would be that access point. And hopefully most of them, if we do a little more lobbying, will be well served by Astria. And we'll see if we can't get that company involved with a collaborative in some way.
Yeah, Astria is definitely a key partner. They actually have their fiber meet point is at the EUPISD's tower on Rockview Hill. So the fiber that they've built out to improve their infrastructure actually has a meet point inside our facility. So they'll be a key partner, and hopefully we can get all the partners together to, out there at, what is it, St. Martin's Point, which, in the middle, where everybody meets, or we start there and work backwards. So with that, I know everybody's probably got to get moving. I really appreciate everybody coming on the call today and sharing your thoughts and ideas. And if you want to stay aware, our website is www.eupschools.org/EUP Connect. We have a form there that if you're interested in just signing up for information or want to stay aware of the activities, we'll make sure that you're on the list, and we're distributing information to you as we move forward, because we want to share. We want to know about the great ideas that everybody has, and every community is just going to be slightly uniquely different. But at the end of the day, we're all citizens. So we'll get everybody connected.
All right, goodbye, everybody.
Thank you very much, Jason, and thank you everyone for joining today. And I did put the link to the EUPISD website, to the EUP Connect, in the chat. Generally, if you click on that, it'll open it up in a tab for you and you'll have it right there. And we did record the session today, and we'll make that available to you as well. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Joanne.